Welcome to Short and to the Point, a podcast from the Comeback in Awful Announcing. Here's your host, Jessica Kleinschmidt.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Short and to the Point on Awful Announcing and the Comeback. Jessica Kleinschmidt here. We are in the midst of playoff baseball. Hopefully you guys are tuning into all the playoff things because it's been so much fun and it's been edge of your seat and did I just pee myself type of baseball. And that is my favorite type of baseball. My guest today is Dani Wexelman. She needs like a full-on like rollout CVS receipt of all the places that she's working. You might know her from SNY. She does play-by-play for ESPN, MLB Network Radio on SiriusXM, Perfect Game, all of the things. And I'm so glad to have her here because I know we've talked about it before in the past where I've been told so many times I have to just be good at one thing as opposed to being good at 5 different things. I'm so lucky to have the platform I do where I can do radio, I can do television, I could do the podcasting, I could do social media, I could do all of those things. And to have somebody like Dani remind me that it's okay to do many things as opposed to sticking to just one thing is so imperative to me. And I'm so glad we got to pick her brain. She's also on the East Coast, so she covers a lot of New York baseball, which has been a lot of heartbreak heading into this. For them, it's the off season because both the Mets and the Yankees missed out on the postseason. So I picked her brain about those things as well. So here is my chat with Dani. Dani is here. I told you she would be here. I'm not a liar. Dani, my beautiful friend, how are you today?
You are never a liar. I am so happy to be here with you today. Excited to talk some baseball and to see your beautiful face.
Definitely. And I'm really excited for you because I know for a fact that my producer, Phil, once this is over, he's going to be like, damn, y'all have a lot of chemistry. So I can promise he'll be saying that after this while he's editing, which it helps to the edit process because I need a lot of it. But before we get into just you and how amazing you are, the playoffs are happening right now. Yeah. And we're taping this the day after the Rangers extended their playoff push into the CS. So let's talk a little bit about them. And I know when it comes to you and doing your in-studio work, everybody's obsessed with playoff predictions. How are your predictions now? And what are or were your thoughts on the Rangers?
Well, I knew they would be better, right? So they won 68 games last year, which was below the standard I think they were hoping for after they spent $500 million, right? The offseason before with Seager and Semien. So I knew it was going to be better. I absolutely didn't have them going this far. I'll be so honest. Preseason predictions are the bane of my existence, and I'm hardly ever right. I actually had Mariners Braves in the World Series, and then when the postseason hit, I slotted the Orioles as my American League team. And obviously, the Rangers had other plans. They've looked incredible, but I think we knew this was coming. I absolutely didn't know that this would be the year they would look this good. And let's be honest, they just got hot. Like they basically were stumbling into the postseason.
Yeah, and it's always kind of cool to see like the hottest team in baseball do well. And it's interesting that you mentioned the Mariners because I know I have a lot of exposure to them being in the AL West myself, but what happened there? I think we can all talk about it, but it's not just what happened during the regular season, but DePoto's comments in the post or heading into the off season. What happened with the Mariners? Because I had them high on my list as well.
Well, the comments were kind of interesting, weren't they? Not just from DePoto, but Cal Raleigh, the comments that he made got backed up by his teammates, which I appreciated. And some people took issue with those comments from Cal. I really didn't. Listen, I think that if you're going to be a part of this team for a long time and you say, I would have loved if we got a big bat, I think that's okay. I think speaking about what you want on your team and what you want to see. Now, would a big bat be the difference maker for them? No. I mean, that was a true collapse at the very end. They had that wild card spot and the starting pitching really crumbled. The offense crumbled. They really just didn't look like themselves. Like the second half Mariners were the team I expected them to be in the first half. And then there at the very end, They ran out of steam. That's what it looked like to me. I don't think that they really did what they needed to do at the deadline. They gave away Paul Sewald, right? They traded him away, their closer. So not that they needed him, so to speak, but I feel like it was just a true collapse of every part of their game, every aspect of their game. And I am bummed because I think postseason baseball in Seattle is of the utmost importance. And I love Scott Service. I love that club. When I was there with you in Oakland, right? Like I very much like what they have there, but they weren't the better team. So they have to watch from home.
Let's refresh people's memories. What exactly did Cal say heading into the postseason? I know he apologized for it, but what were his comments?
Yeah, I think that he said that he wished they would have gotten a bat. He wished they would have made and gone out and gotten a big player. I think those were the words that he used, was big player. And you saw what some other teams did and how they added at the deadline, some more strategically than others. I would say there weren't a ton of big guys to go get, so to speak. But Cal, I think, had alluded to the fact that if they would have gotten that big splash, let's be honest, when a clubhouse gets that big guy and he walks through those doors, changes everything. You're like, my front office is in, my team is in, the people are in. And I don't think that the Mariners did that at all. So you're kind of just riding with your dudes, which is okay when you have a complete top to bottom team. The Mariners didn't have that.
Are the teams in the playoffs right now the teams that should be in the playoffs?
1,000%. Listen, you play until the very end, and if you get in, you get in. I don't care how you get in. The Phillies got in. They were the last team in last year, and they were the second to last team standing, right? That's good for baseball. Parity's good for baseball. Having teams shake things up, especially at the end, right? You want to keep those fans engaged, which I think is so important, right? We made the rule changes for the fans. So I would hope that at the very end, it's good and juicy, and the storylines are great, and the races are tight. That's what you want to see. So the teams that get in, get in. Am I bummed maybe that the Mariners lost out and got booted? Yeah, I am. And I really wish I would have seen them in, but they weren't the better team. And that's not how the game works, right? Baseball's so funny like that. You get rewarded, I think, to be honest, for September. Like the whole season matters. You can't win the season. That's the saying, right? You can't win the season in April, May, June, but you sure can lose it. And I think that's what we saw, was some of those tendencies biting teams in the butt.
It's so interesting how baseball's made up of two teams on a singular team. It's your regular season team, and then how you can be in the playoffs. And the Orioles showed that. So let's talk about them, because they're young for sure, but they still have enough veteran presence. And we talked to Melanie about this, like, compared to the Houston Astros exposure, perhaps in the postseason, was that what ultimately demise? Obviously, we knew what happened with the pitchers, but was that their demise? Perhaps not enough playoff exposure to understand not just a veteran presence, because you need to have those guys on the team, but did that hurt a young squad?
I think they were struggling a little towards the end of the season. So I think it's probably a culmination of slowing down at the wrong time. Their starting pitchers, I think, went 8 innings in this postseason, right? 8 innings total for the starters. That's going to really hurt you when, on top of it, your pen is not acting like the guys they've been all season long, with or without Felix Bautista, right? If you look at the splits, I don't think it's too big of a difference in ERA with and without him, but his presence is just there. He's intimidating. He's on the mound. You fear him just looking at him. And I think that's part of the factor of why he's so successful, besides the stuff. But I would say combination, maybe slowing down a little bit, didn't have the veterans, and they didn't do what they did all season long at the most important point, right? You could look at the Twins and look at Carlos Correa and say his season was mid. He had an average season, maybe some would say below average, and postseason Correa comes out and is crushing. Now, will the Twins win the series? I have no idea, but he's showing up when it matters. And when you watched their playoff games, they sat. Teams that sat and waited have not been playing particularly well. I'd say that's a huge factor that goes into it too. But when it comes to the postseason, I think you got to have some guys who have experience. Their roster lacked that, but they also were not playing the way they played all season. And I think that they're going to learn a ton. I hope they learn a ton. I think they're going to be around for a long time.
I think they're definitely going to be the team that F around and find out for the next while, which is great to hear.
Hell yeah.
Obviously, you're on the East Coast, a lot of New York baseball for you. Let's talk about the Mets. A lot of monetary value dipped into their organization, the top actual monetary value. It was the first time in a long time the top 3 teams that put so much money into their payroll didn't even make the playoffs. I mean, we're talking about the Yankees weren't even in first place. So let's talk about the Mets first before we go to the pinstripes. Buck Showalter, of course, was relieved of his managerial duties. Was that a surprising acquisition or a surprising announcement for you? Because I know he was very beloved on that team. We know the ownership or front office is changing. Was that a shock for you?
I wasn't surprised, to be honest. I felt like it's okay if they decide to make that move. It's okay if they keep him. I think it's no harm, no foul, in my opinion.
Right.
But I do think that this clubhouse, and those guys did love him. I mean, Francisco Lindor went on and on. That guy, he could wax poetic on how much he loved Buck. And I think that probably rang true for a lot of the clubhouse. But if you look at the dynamic of where this team is going, they're bringing up younger guys. They're going to let their rookies kind of, sink their teeth into next season. You come out and say, we're not going to compete until 25. That's BS. First of all, you're going to compete next year. And I actually hate that any ownership or any team would even allude to that fact. I feel like that gives everyone else a competitive advantage. I don't know why you would say that, but this team is going to be better than I think whatever they're expecting. I firmly do believe that. But I think that if you look at the dynamic of the younger guys, the veteran guys, and the guys they need to bring in, I'm okay with another manager coming in to do this job. So I wasn't surprised. It was tough to watch Buck tell everybody. And I do think that it was really enjoyable to be around him the last 2 seasons, but I'm okay with the move for the New York Mets. Listen, baby, it's New York, you gotta perform, you gotta execute, and you gotta get to where you say you're going to get to. And if you don't, you've got to make the changes.
And those changes, what would those changes be for a roster? Because they know the money was there and we know they weren't there on the trade deadline. Max Scherzer always ends up on a team that is, he's literally like, doesn't matter what team I start the season on, I'm going to end up on a postseason team come trade deadline. So what happens here? What happens? What do the Mets need to do in order to hopefully not repeat in 2024?
Doesn't it feel like it's Max's world and we're all just living in it
100%.
all the time?
I wish I could date like that. We're going to start off fine, but I need a trade deadline. And if things aren't heading toward playoffs, I need to talk to the ownership about that.
We could figure that out. That's why a deep bench is important, right? In life and in baseball.
A deep bench. You got to have a Rangers situation going on. A lot of depth.
Yeah. A lot of depth on that roster. I will say this too. I would like to say that I don't think Buck is the reason they didn't win games and they didn't perform up to the standards. I definitely want to say that. Buck's not the reason. It is a wide variety of reasons. But changes that need to be made. Number 1, you have to get a designated hitter that can hit. The Mets had the 3rd worst average among the entire league when it came to the DH position. That's not going to hack it. Right? You have to have more than Pete Alonso on your team who can hit home runs. You have to get a guy who can slug. In fact, you got to get a couple guys who can slug baseballs. They were missing that 100%. Number 2, you got to get some starting pitching, right? You had a rookie in Kodai Senga, who's so established in NPB, right? That dude already did everything that needs to be done over there. Comes over. He held that staff together. That was comprised of Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, 2 first ballot Hall of Famers, right? And this dude comes in and holds it together. Didn't miss a start. He is the reason that staff even breathed relevancy, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So you have to get some starters. You have to re-sign Pete Alonso, statistically one of the best first basemen in the league. It makes no sense to me. Intangibly, I think one of the best people in the community in New York City and wants to be here and loves the lights and loves the pressure. He's a homegrown dude. I don't know anything about that situation. That's not quite my bread and butter, right. But I got to re-sign Pete Alonso. And then I just think you got to get a couple veteran guys. I think what you're watching, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, you're on the other spectrum, right? So the Mets spent $500 million and it didn't work. I love a great experiment. I love an owner that spends. I love a franchise that invests. It just because you spend a lot does not mean you win a lot, right? That's never equated to that. And so I think finding the solid dudes in the league, there are a ton of solid dudes that are being overlooked all the time for the big sexy names. And sometimes the solid dudes are the ones who I think pay the most and make the most for your team.
I know you can't get too in depth with the Pete Alonso stuff, and I know it's a lot of insider stuff, but Stearns did say he's going to be our 2024 first baseman. Beyond that, we have absolutely no idea. Do you how confident are you that on opening day, Pete Alonso is the Mets first baseman?
Who's going to play first base if Pete's not there? You're going to not only lose, he hit 46 home runs this season. Dude's had now consistent slugging seasons. He's fantastic at first base. He's pretty much willing to do anything you need him to do. I don't know who's going to play first unless you're going to look on the market. By the way, that free agent market, you've seen it. I would say pretty thin coming in when you look at next season. I don't know where you're going to go shopping to get a first baseman who can do what Pete does and provide your power. So I would be shocked if he's not on this team, and I would be really disappointed. I hate to use the D word here. I don't like to throw the D word out a lot, but I would be really disappointed if he's not on the team.
Well, and even from a perspective of when you have Uncle Steve as your owner, who is so open and honest and transparent. And he said, we love Pete. We would love to have him here. Those discussions will happen. What's that been kind of like to have to cover a team where the owner, I'm not saying it's an open door policy, but it's definitely, he's more accessible than a lot of other owners.
Have you ever seen this with an owner?
No,
right? No. No, I think it's wonderful for the game. I think it's unique. And I also think it comes with some consequences, right? When you say, we're going to win in 5 years or whatever Steve Cohen had mentioned, the owner of the Mets, that, by the time he takes over in 5 years, you're putting pretty high expectations. Love that for the fans, though, when you fall short, right? When you end up trading Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, you traded both of them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually insane that's how this season ended up playing out when you look back at all the excitement and hype. And it's not because Edwin Diaz wasn't there. It's not because the closer wasn't there, but to have a guy who's really transparent, I'm for it. I think we're missing that aspect of the game. I want accountability. That's what I crave the most is accountability. I don't need you to apologize or take ownership every game, but there's got to be some accountability. And I think he does a fantastic job of that.
Definitely. We're going to go to the other New York team. What was your biggest surprise there? Was there a point in the season where you're kind of like something changed? Because the Yankees were historically bad. And I just remember going on a lot of the broadcasts talking about the absence of Aaron Judge, which I felt like at the time, the numbers showed we don't have Aaron Judge. We're definitely struggling. But even when he returned, things weren't, hunky-dory after that. So what happened with the Yankees this season, Dani?
You trying to get me in trouble with the entire greater Manhattan area?
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
I think Toegate was the kickoff. No pun intended. Wow, I am good today. I had my coffee. Toegate. Yeah, I genuinely think that was the demise of the season. You lose your captain, you lose your confidence. Their record was a losing record without him. You can't win a game without Aaron Judge. Yeah. You got to be able to win without Aaron Judge, right? You can't rely on the fact that guy's going to be there all the time. And if you can't win ball games without him, I don't know what to tell you. That's not a winning ball club to me. So I like to go back really 2 off seasons and 2 trade deadlines. It's just felt like to me, we've talked about Frankie Montas and the acquisition of him, and it's nothing against him, but Luis Castillo was the number 1 guy. He was the number 1 guy last year, and they didn't go get him. And they fumbled that. They've fumbled for me left and right. And that's been the difference maker when you watch them put their team together. They have the money. They have the talent. I don't know what this business with the analytics situation is. Actually, I was in Jupiter for the WWBA World Championship, which is every travel team in the country competes to get to this tournament. It's the last travel team tournament. So every scout, every major league scout, college scout, agent is in Jupiter last weekend. That's where I was at. And I saw a Yankee scout, and I saw, we were talking a little bit about it, and he's like, I kind of agree that there's some things that we could be better at. And I didn't disagree with what Judge said. And I thought that was really interesting. And I was like, wow, I'm kind of surprised, number one, you're saying this, and two, that you agree with it. And so I think that for me, like, not having him, you have aging guys playing your corners. I love Anthony Rizzo. I think I think he's fantastic for a clubhouse. When he's good, but you've got aging guys on your corners. You got rid of Donaldson finally, right? You don't have an outfielder in left who can play the position. Your DH is walking home. Like, Giancarlo Stanton has not been himself. There's so many things that are going on. And you watch the Harrison Bader, Jordan Montgomery trade. That's been soured quickly. It looked like it was in the Yankees' favor last year. And look what Monty's done now for the Rangers. I mean, he's gone Cardinals to Rangers, but for me, it's felt like they've just done second best. And guess what? Our girl, Melanie, and her Orioles, look at the American League East. The Rays aren't going away. The Blue Jays aren't going away. The Orioles aren't going away, right? And when you look at them, I think that that's the problem, is the Yankees haven't changed. You got to change. Fundamentally, there's got to be some changes there. And Anthony Volpe will hit better. Aaron Judge will be back healthy next year, right? You've got younger guys coming up that hopefully can play those spots. Go get Cody Bellinger. That dude, left-handed bat, outfielder. You could use him. Maybe Blake Snell wants to play in New York. You need another guy in your rotation. The only thing they did well this year was their bullpen and Garrett Cole, who should win the American League Cy Young. Their bullpen was the best all season, and Garrett Cole was an ace.
Yeah. Oh, Garrett Cole had an amazing season. I know you mentioned Montas. You cannot have JP Sears back, New York. You will not allow, you're not allowed to have him back.
He's yours.
He is mine. He is ours. But here's what's interesting. You mentioned the one guy mentality. And I often think about Mike Trout. This is the pre-Shohei Ohtani days, where if it were up to one guy, the Angels would be in the World Series every effing year. You know what I mean? So, totally. But to actually physically see, and we saw the Angels do okay when Trout would randomly, land on the IL, or Ohtani wasn't pitching that day. But when it comes to Judge, the numbers were insane. It was so insane. And I was talking to Susan Waldman about it, and she's like, it's so different with Aaron, because you even take the numbers aspect out of it. When he's not there, it's just totally different. Isn't that interesting though? Because baseball's so finicky, you can't put the weight of the World Series on one guy. But in this case, I think you kind of can.
I feel like, and like in that kind of narrative and storyline, is you have Aaron Judge, who's your captain. He's your identity. There's 25 other guys who need to show up with an identity and a personality and let people see it and let your team see it. You cannot be reliant on one dude who freaking stubbed his toe and was out for most of the season, right? Like, you can't, I don't care. I don't care who you are. You've got to have a team that figures out more personalities and more chemistry and other things, because your one identity is not working at all. If you look at the other teams who are having success right now, they have a myriad of personalities. They're all freaking bonkers. They're all weird and wild. And listen, I get it. There's the hair policy, right? And New York has a standard. I like the standard. I like tradition. I like culture, but to an extent, and I think they've gone too far, and they gotta, I said this like last month. You'll love this. I was like, they need to go on a retreat. They need to turn off their phones, and they got to play some board games and have some bonding moments and marshmallows
trust
maybe
ball.
Yeah, some trust balls. Maybe there should be a little whiskey involved. Like, let's get down to business and have some fun, and then bring it into the season. There's got to be something like that with this team, because the pinstripes are a little too straight for my liking right now.
Yeah. No, and it's true. And I feel like that kind of happened at the beginning of Aaron Judge's career. I feel like, if you ever meet Aaron, he's very down to earth. He's a 209 guy. Like, they're very like chill. Yes. And when you go on the Yankees, I feel like there's a different character you have to play. And it's a respected one. It's a respected one. Don't get me wrong. But it's almost like baseball is maybe third in line of how you present yourself as a New York Yankee. But I'm right there with you. There's such a beautiful baseball tradition there. But I haven't seen it over the last couple of seasons. And you even mentioned, like, the trade deadline was waiting for Cashman to do something, and it didn't happen. And then you're like, well, maybe they're waiting for Ohtani. So it was such a finicky, unique situation where, and I had people that have covered the Yankees or even Yankee players say, like, I'm sorry to say this, I know you cover the A's. I was like, it was a bigger disappointment for the Yankees, I would assume,
Oh
like we knew what we were getting going into it. And you have that team and the Mariners and the Padres, same scenario. There was like all these huge goals that they had to reach. And it was such a unique baseball season with the bigger teams. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad the Orioles made it, but you still want to see the Yankees in there just because it's just like tradition, and when that doesn't happen, it feels wrong.
I feel naked walking around the city right now. Like, congrats to everybody else, but like, I'm like, this just doesn't feel right that they've already turned the page. Like, fans are watching hockey, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're like the New York Rangers. They're like, let's go Rangers. Let's go Liberty. Like, let's move on. They're already moving on. Basketball, hockey, like everything else. It does feel wrong. And listen, every team needs to get to this point and feel this pain, because then they'll realize how bad it is, right? And then they'll climb their way out and hopefully be better in the next season. And I think that's kind of what's happening. But it's been a while. What are we at year 13 since they've won a World Series? So like, these fans are starved. For their standards, like, they're 100% starved right now. And I feel like if, again, like, I think Aaron Boone's going to be back. I think that a lot of those guys are going to be back. That's fine. That's fine. Like, you got to find a way to be better than the other teams who are not going anywhere.
Well, and then the thing that's interesting is I was thinking about that when it comes to like, I felt like not too long ago, we're like, you won like back-to-back world championships. Like, give us a second. That time's gone. Yeah. They're drowning, just like they're starved. They're like, we're ready for this. Like, we know we had it for a while. We almost had it for a while, but this is like embarrassing now. When you
looked at their team this year, though, like, I didn't see a World Series team. Did you?
Now that I take a step back, no, right? But probably because I also I didn't have my like monocle on, and I think it was just because it's the Yankees. It's like they're always gonna be in it. It's like when Mike Trout is injured for half the season, maybe he's still gonna win the AL MVP. Like, it's kind of one of those things. You're like, Mike Trout hasn't played one game, but I feel like he should still be in discussions. Like, it is what it is. That kind of a deal,
I tell people, I'm like, I'm not afraid of them anymore. I want to be afraid of the Yankees. I want them to have this, the Bronx to be this place where you come in and you're like, oh shit, I have to go play the Yankees. I want that back. I want vintage fear back. I don't know if it can get back, but you're totally right that there's this air of, well, it's the Yankees. They could probably get back anyway. It doesn't matter what they start with, but they've lost their touch a little bit the past few years. And I'm looking for them to get their groove back.
It's just that even weird to have this conversation trips me out. The Yankees have lost their touch. It's just a weird thing. Like, they aren't the Yankees we used to know. Like, and you really think about it, you take a step back, you're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when
they're not your daddy's Yankees.
Exactly. You have the names of Aaron Judge and Anthony Rizzo and Giancarlo Stanton.
Yeah.
A few years back. It's just something that you think of, like, they should be winning all the damn time. And maybe it's just kind of one of those things where we're thankful because it gives these other teams a chance in a way where it can make people fall in love with baseball all over again. We're going to switch roles right now. We're just going to talk about you a little bit more because I've found you would share these amazing like old clips of you doing like local news. And it's just one of those things where, first of all, Mama, you have not aged a second, can I just say? But where, like, mama. Yeah, of course. Yes. When you take a step back and you see just the market or the trajectory of what sports media has done since the infancy of your career, what are some of those drastic changes that you couldn't even believe that we're doing now compared to local news, Dani?
Gosh, I would say like advocacy and support, probably. Like, that's probably not a sexy answer, but I think when you're doing like local level things, it's so dog eat dog. It's so, do your best, find your niche, like find your voice and try to share it with everybody. And then when you start to rise a little bit, it's like, all right, I'm actually pretty good at this. I need people to support me. Like you literally can't do this without people around you or people who are above you advocating for you. So I feel like that has been probably a huge part of my success, because I lost it all in 2019, right? Like
Yeah.
I had like college, local, minor league team, building up at MLB.com, and then it's all gone. The second I thought I had started to figure it out, because I was a freaking tadpole in the city, and I still am a tadpole, but maybe I have like little flippers now. I don't know.
You
if
have legs for sure. You have
I got
legs.
some wings.
You
I
got
some wings.
and legs. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was the people.
Yeah.
The people
Actually
did it.
creepy to think
Yeah.
about. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just pictured you as a tadpole.
A little tadpole?
Yeah, I think you're still kind of hot, so it's fine. It works. Yeah.
A hot tadpole. Yeah.
Hot tadpole. When did you start noticing the advocating happen more? Because I feel like there's always a time in our career where we're like, oh, I'm getting more support.
When I lost my job. When I lost my job in 2019 from .com, I felt like you don't really think about all the connections you make or the people that you meet along the way and you stay in touch with. Those were the life-saving people. They all threw me rafts. Darren Sutton specifically with Perfect Game threw me a freaking raft, asked me if I wanted to do play-by-play. That's the reason that ESPN called and said, do you want to do play-by-play? Right. Yeah. So I think that it was the life raft people and the people who knew I was good at my job and that I wanted it. Right. Like I tell people this all the time, and I know you can say the same exact thing. I think I'm amazing, special, fantastic, wonderful, but I worked my ass off. I don't have famous parents. I went to the University of Missouri. I went in the middle of the country, right, to the journalism school and studied there. And I just busted. I busted my ass. I do my homework. I like to treat people the way I want to be treated, which we know is such a corny adage, but is the most true adage that could exist. And so like all of those things are the reason that those people who didn't have to give me a chance gave me a chance and just kept throwing me boats. And I would just collect all the rafts, and everything just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I still, there's so many things I still want to do, but I feel like I'm on my feet because of all those people. And because like, I love this job and I love this space and I love being able to take up space in it. And I like to think that all of those like combinations of like things sprinkled on have been a huge reason that I get to be here with you and do things like this with you. Like what a freaking treat. It's not that I have to, it's I get to do these things.
And, and that's interesting that you mentioned that too, because one theme that I've been hearing from a lot of people lately is, doing so many things. And I feel like now we're at a space in this industry where that's kind of embraced as opposed to, we just want you to just do play-by-play, and maybe sometimes you do sidelines, but then you're supposed to be a 5-tool player, but it's almost like that's frowned upon. So how are you able to embrace all doing things? You do play-by-play, you do studio, you do sidelines, you do color, you do all these different things. Was that difficult for you, or were you just, I'm going to do it all?
Yeah, first they're like, be a Jill of all trades. No, don't do one thing. No, do two things. No, like you're literally like your head's on a swivel. How do I navigate? Nobody, fun fact for everybody here. Nobody knows what they're doing in this industry. We're all running around with our heads cut off, trying to figure it out, trying to do the right thing. Just say yes. Just keep saying yes. And then go from there. I think it's hard. I'll be so honest. I think it's very hard to go from play-by-play to sideline to studio, that I mentally make a switch in my head to do those things because they're all very different jobs. Yeah. I'm still me. I try to be myself in every aspect, but they're very different and they require different homework, different personality, different, like as you're doing the job, the moment of the job is very different, and what you care about and what the purpose of the job is. So I would say it's really hard to go from thing to thing, but I would never say no. I would never say no to an opportunity to grow and to get better. It's really scary. Like the jump is terrifying. Like your stomach, your heart's in your stomach. It was terrifying. My first play-by-play for ESPN, my first college game, I remember it and I was freaking terrified. Even though I know the sport, I had been working on my play-by-play, but it's still terrifying. And it's a good thing. You should be scared. That means you want it. It means you care, but it's not easy. And I feel like I have to work maybe a little extra hard because the jobs are so different and I want to be the best. And they require different things. So as long as I keep that in mind and make the switch, if I don't make the switch, go Google my name and read the Twitter comments. You'll see what people say when I don't make those changes. But
and F those people. But I will say, how do you balance that though? Because I totally understand where you're coming from. I feel like reporter Jess is a certain way, host Jess is a certain way, just doing this is a different way. Writer Jess is. How do you balance your different Danis while still being Dani?
Fresh air. Honestly, there has to be something in between the thing. It's really hard to go from play-by-play to sideline to studio to podcast host to reporter. It's really hard. So spacing things out, being really organized with my calendars. I'm such a freaking nerd. I know you are too. So many calendars, journals, books, things like that, I would say. And trying to the two keys are probably celebrate the win that you had doing the job and then move along and decompress and let it go, because we all sit there and I say this every time. Oh, I could have said this better. I could have asked this better. Literally, I finished an interview on Monday and the second it finished, I said, I should have asked it this way. I should have done that the second. I'm constantly criticizing, which isn't an awesome quality, but I'd say flush it out. So I try to flush it and let it go and know that I get another chance to do it again and be better and improve. That's probably the only way to maintain all the different jobs, is to let it go. Let it go. We're not perfect. And as soon as you remember that and realize that, then if you gave your best, then that's it. It's all I can do, but it's not easy. It really isn't. And I haven't found the perfect, I would say, recipe for that. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm a human and I'm way too hard on myself.
But I think that's okay. I think if you're still trying to figure out the perfect recipe, that means it's still a growing process.
We're still in it, baby. We're still here.
Yeah. And, and I just feel like as women, we just have such a unique, not necessarily a unique space, because we're all kind of collectively together here. But I feel like there's a special thing that we can offer as women. And what do you think that is that maybe men can't offer in our space?
Our perspective, our background, our experiences, that's what separates us. It's not a weakness, it's a strength. I think about this all the time when I go on radio, right? And I'm listening to everybody host. My opinions are different. My thoughts are different. The way that I present information is different. And I think that's such a good thing. I think it's a breath of fresh air. And I still think we're carving out our space here, right? And there are still people who don't love women in sports or think women belong in sports. And that's fine. That's totally fine. Their issues are not my issues, because I know that my space is meant to be here. But I do think that trying to realize that being a woman is actually your superpower. The sooner you do that, the better everything is going to go, because I think that we bring so many different intangibles and perspectives again, and what we've gone through in our lives and the way that I view the world through my eyes, although we are both women, different, but we are bringing something I am looking at the same exact play that a man is looking at. And I know that we're thinking about it in different ways. I know that we are. Look at us. I know that we are. And I think that's what makes us special. And I think that it's important to have those voices. And I know here's the key again. We'll go full circle here. I have bosses who also think that way and support that and encourage that. And if they didn't, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I probably wouldn't be in sports. So it's the people above you who keep reiterating how important that is and elevating you because of it. Those are the really important things here. But yeah, being a woman, to be honest, I used to not even tell people what I did. When I was just starting, when I moved to New York, I didn't even want to tell them because I didn't feel like I knew enough, or that they would ask me questions that I know the answers to, or they wouldn't think my job was big enough for me to be talking about. I would literally not tell people I worked in sports. And I'm so ashamed and so mad at myself that I did that now. And I'm maybe still a little timid sometimes to just blurt out everything, because I think it's a lot to take in. But I'm really proud now. And it took a second to get there and realize that being a woman in sports is what makes me extra special.
Isn't it interesting? I feel like every woman in this space, and especially like where we are at in our career, I'm not saying we're better than anybody, but the amount of time we put in, we've all gone through the vibe or the mentality of, I don't know if I should say anything.
All
Like,
the
I don't know.
time.
Isn't that
What's
weird?
wrong with
It's
us?
literally so fucking cool what we do. It
What's
is
wrong
so
with us?
cool what we do. And we're just like, I mean, I don't know. Like, what do you do? I don't know. I just work in media and like, and
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. But really on the inside, you're like, I'm going to scream it from the mountaintops. We all go through it.
I'm a big freaking deal. Like
Yeah.
a man would never be like, oh, yeah, I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
Like you would never even do that. So
I was so hammered once at a bar that I said I was a nurse. And I was just like,
wait, what kind of nurse did they ask you what kind? And you're just like,
no,
fake
I was like, I'm a nurse. And then I don't know, like literally I couldn't be further from like I'm a college dropout. If he was gonna like quiz me on that stuff, I'm like, can't you just ask me about batting averages like a normal person? I just remember thinking that, and my friends were over there looking at me like, why'd you say that? I'm like,
I don't know because I'm a freak. Leave
because
me
he was
alone.
wearing a San Francisco Giants hat, and I just was like, I don't want to get involved. I just want to enjoy my vodka soda and live my life.
Let me be. The thing is, when I walk into a bar, and I think I've earned the right to say this, and I know you have as well. When I walk into a bar, I know when it comes to baseball, I know more than probably almost everyone in that bar.
Mhm.
Unless you are a diehard fan of that team and you watch
Yeah.
their games every day, I probably know more. And it's not really that fun for me to sit there. Like when guys are talking about it and they think they know everything, I don't like, sometimes I like to be like, no, it's actually this, but I don't really enjoy that, to be
I don't
honest.
either.
Yeah. So I think that's probably part of it is not, I don't know. I don't feel like I want to do that, but I'm proud of myself that I know all those things. That's just like, sometimes I just want to be me and I want to sit at the bar, right? Hat on, watch a game, just chill. Like, I don't want to talk to you about the rule changes. Sorry, bro. Like, just get to getting.
Yeah, like I literally just like going to the bar, having a glass of wine and a salad and watching when the boys are on the road. Like I just want to do that. And I feel like that makes us better at our jobs because we like
You forgot to say chicken wings.
I do like my chicken wings, yes. Sometimes though they're just annoying to eat and I just would rather just have a salsa. There is a salad I can order at a place that's basically chicken, like boneless wings on the salad, which kind of helps everything.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Chef's kiss. Oh my God.
Before I let you go though, and I was just thinking about this as we were talking, where on the scale do you think we are as far as women in sports? And I'm gonna make this more specific. Women in baseball, I feel like we have it more difficult because of the sport that we cover. I would say like on a scale of 1 to 3, where are we as far as embracing women and covering this game?
3 is most embraceful.
Yeah.
I'd say we're at a 2.
Okay.
I think, maybe that's the lame answer. I definitely don't think we're at a 1. I think we've come a long way. We have a lot farther to go. We need more women and female voices, I would say, in higher positions, right? We need more women on the radio. We need more women in broadcast booths. We need more women who are covering the game as beat reporters. It's a really hard job. You know everything about it. I know nothing about being a beat reporter. I just watch you guys in awe and bow down because I could not do that for 162. I truly could not do it. I'm not made for it. And I know that, but I think that we need more women who want to do those jobs, who are encouraged, who know about the job. I think that's important. Knowledge, right? And exposure to the job. I think we've got some ways to go in that regard. And I think what's tough, like people aren't as used to hearing female voices in those high places. And they're going to have to get used to it eventually. They'll get there. Like everyone else will get there. But I think that the more they hear us, the louder we roar, right? And that we're here and we're not going anywhere and we've planted our roots, that we'll get to the 3. I know we'll get to the 3, 100%. It's never going to be perfect. It's probably going to be 2.99999, right? Like it's never going to be right there. But I don't care about that. We did that women's equality piece for SNY last month. I think it was 2 months ago. And I like the point I like love to hammer home is that people think that we want more or extra. or anything of that sort, anything that is an adjective to more than above. We just want the exact same. We want to exist in the space and get paid what we deserve, get paid the same as our counterparts, and get treated the same and get the same opportunities. We're not asking for more. We're here. Like, we're not going anywhere. I'm not going to go do another job because, Johnny Joe in his basement who's picking his nose doesn't like to hear a woman. I'm not going anywhere, but I would like equality. I would like that to be equal. And I think we're still pushing for that in certain spaces, but I know we're going to get there. And it's because, we had people before us, we have us. I know we're doing our damnedest and we're doing our part and we're paying it forward. And that's going to lead to the 2.999.
And it's interesting you brought that up because it sounds so simple as like treat us equally as far as the opportunities. I feel like there's been situations I've been in where they don't want, and in their defense, they don't want it to be too showy, like, oh, we're hiring her because she's a woman. Because I don't believe that I'm at that point in my career where I can say, they can confidently say that. So they do too less, to where it's like, okay, well, we'll just like let her be. I'm like, well, it's still the first freaking woman to do this. Like, maybe do something. So that's interesting. Like that they can't show about that, but that's a whole thing. Why are we no longer at a 1 on that scale?
Well, we have more women who are in positions of power and who are then able to hire other women, right? If there's nobody in the job who looks different, sounds different, comes from a different background, we're never going to make any changes, right? That's why diversity is of the utmost importance. If you don't have, it's not just a baseball thing, right? It's like a life thing. If you don't have different voices and a variety of people who, like, I work in a space, in the amateur space, where I was just sitting with Charles Johnson, right? I think 3-time Gold Glove winner, World Series winner with the Marlins, catcher. And we were talking about Black catchers in the game. And this is a much larger conversation, but there is a lack of African-American catchers in the game. And you could go into great detail about that. And Charles was so proud to represent something that younger kids could see and could know. A Black kid can grow up and be a catcher and have that position and not be moved from that position, because that's what happens. And so I think that along the same lines of women, we're in higher positions, our voices are in different places. We have advocates who don't care that we're a woman doing the job. We're good at our job. We just happen to be a woman. And so it helps because we are able to diversify the voices and what it looks like. You look at Kim Ng, right? The first female general manager to take her team to the postseason, right? And so now you have kids and her background who say, wait, Kim looks like me. I can do that job. Somebody who looks like me can do that job. That's what we have to have more of. There has to be more of that. And there have to be more people above us who want to hire women, who invest in women, who think that our presence is important and our voice is important. And that it's important to make sure that when someone's watching you, that they look at you and say, that person looks like me. I can do that job. I think that's the key. That's why we're not at a 1 anymore. And man, we're freaking pushing that door down. I think it's great. We're not there, but that's okay. And it takes time. When you are a force to be reckoned with, it takes time.
I think we're no longer at a place where we can say she's good for a girl. She's just good. And that I feel is huge for me personally. I hated saying, oh, she's not bad for a girl. Like, I could just be like, just not bad, or she's good. Period.
She's good. She can do the job. Right? Like, how crazy is that? I mean, yeah, I feel like we're probably a little behind in that sentiment. And I wish we'd been saying that a few years ago, maybe a decade ago. But yeah, we are getting to that point. That's freaking awesome that we can say things like that now. And you watch, Lauren Shahadi is my favorite example of watching her on the sidelines in the postseason. And like, I go to school, I text her and I'm like, I'm going to the school of Shahadi right now, taking notes on how she does things. And there's nobody better, no person better than her on the sidelines in baseball in the postseason. That's a fact. Nobody better than her. And it doesn't matter that she's a woman. She is the best at her job.
I agree. And I think I take notes from her too, just like, and like you as well. When I watched you, because you were my guest at the Coliseum recently, somewhat of a guest. And it was just like, it was cool to watch you like, and see how you handle a space that you haven't, I mean, geographically, a space you haven't been in. And it was just cool to like take notes from you as well. And just remind ourselves that we deserve to be there just as much. And we deserve to be asking the questions. And we especially deserve to be asking the questions. We didn't have those same opportunities as far as like our baseball playing abilities as much as they did. So it's very refreshing to see you do such an amazing job.
The House of Jess, you mean, when I came to the House of Jess?
The House of Jess. The House of Jess. It misses you desperately, by the way.
Yeah, I miss you. I miss Oakland. That was a freaking treat for me. Love the fans. Love that ballpark in the city. So they are lucky to have you.
Thank you, Dani. All right. Well, thanks so much for stopping by. This has been amazing. You're
the best. Thanks for having me.
Of course. That was Dani Wexelman. Like I said, she does a little bit of everything for everywhere. I don't know if that's grammatically correct, but also being a woman in this space is so unique, and it's not scary as much as it used to be anymore. I can confidently say that. And I want people to know being a woman is our superpower. Just like Dani said, it's so unique. We have such a unique perspective. I can't tell you the amount of times that I get more respect asking the questions. I stopped playing baseball at the age of however old I was when I was a sophomore in high school, and I just switched to softball. I'm never going to have the same resume as the panels that I'm on, like the Dallas Bradens of the world, the Dave Stewarts of the world. I'm never going to say, oh yeah, Brent Rooker and I have the same resume. Tony Kemp and I, we did the exact same thing in our baseball careers. That's just not going to happen. So if you're constantly looking at something in a unique way, and you're not asking the same questions as everybody else that's asking those questions, you're going to stand out above the crowd. And then you're going to be able to help on your own broadcast or your own pregame interview, your own assignment, your own write-up, your own story, all the things. So I'm so glad that she was able to join me. She's also one of my dearest friends, and she's one of the reasons why I kept going. So I'm so appreciative of her. You can see her on SNY, MLB Network Radio on SiriusXM. She does play-by-play for ESPN, The Perfect Game, all of that stuff. Perfect Game is so unique too. She gets to meet some of these guys in their infancy of their careers, and they remember her years after. So check all of her stuff out. And thank you so much for tuning in to Short and to the Point here on the Comeback and Awful Announcing. You can follow this podcast, like, subscribe, all the things on all the podcast platforms where you get all of that. Thanks to Philip once again for always putting up with me and making this amazing podcast go round and round. And I love it so much. And I'm so appreciative of you guys tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Want even more short and to the point? Follow Jessica at Kleinschmidt JD and head over to thecomeback.com and awfulannouncing.com.